What it do, traveler? Today I'm going to cover one of my most frequently asked questions. How can I travel to so many places if I don't speak the languages? If you've always wondered that, this is the video for you. Hey, I'm Lucky Lewis and welcome back to Lucky the Bard. A lot of people always ask me the same question. How many languages do you speak? I usually reply, none. I barely speak English. But the truth is, I speak a little bit of a lot of languages. People always assume that if I've been to 52 countries, I must be bilingual or trilingual, but the reality is I usually don't learn the languages until I've been there for a little while. So I jokingly always enjoy practicing and speaking other languages when I've been somewhere and then I come back home. Like recently I was at work with a girl and we were talking about Japan. And she says, oh, I'm half Japanese. And I said, oh, sumimasen, nihongo ga skoshi wakarimasu ka? Skoshi? And she was like, oh, I'm actually half Mexican. And I said, hablo mucho de castellano, pero solo entiendo un poco. Si habla muy despacio, quizás entiendo todo, pero si habla muy rápido, no entiendo nada. And she says, I only speak English. And I was like, what? You've got all that culture swirling around in your body and you haven't taken the time to try and learn another language? But I'll talk a little bit more about how to learn another language, probably in another video. But in this video, I'm gonna focus on how to travel when you don't speak the language where you're going. Well, first thing I would recommend is learning a few basic phrases. And I know that sounds really simple, but a couple of words can actually go a very long way. My first trip ever was to Egypt. And when I went to Egypt, I hired a tour guide. Now that's another way, if you don't speak the language and you're not that comfortable, to kind of get your foot in the water by having someone who's there who speaks the local language that can help you in a bind. But I asked him, I said, what is the most important phrase I need to learn? Like, what's the first thing? And I don't speak a word of Arabic, and he said, shukran, shukran. So saying shukran just means thank you. And thank you is probably the first thing you need to learn in every country. Because in Egypt, everyone was trying to sell you stuff, especially when you go to the touristy areas. People are constantly pushing things on you, and saying thank you or no thank you will actually get you through a surprising number of situations. If you're listening to this video, I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume that you speak English. Lucky for you, English is the universal language of travel. If you go to an airport, everything will be in the local language as well as English. If you go to a restaurant or a hotel, they're probably gonna know a little bit of English. That's because England was crazy back in the day. A little bit of history. England has actually invaded every country in the world except for 22 of them. So people debate about what the term invasion actually means, but the fact that 90% of the world has been invaded by England at some point has led the whole world to have English be the closest thing we have to a universal language. So even in places that are very remote, especially children who are in school, they're already learning some form of English. So everywhere you go, just go knowing that you probably will be able to find someone who speaks the language. Now, let's just say you aren't able to find anyone that speaks the language. The trick is to be nice. Be very, very nice. I mean, you already know that the average person is very helpful in a way. Like, they actually want to help you. And if you're coming to their country and you're being humble, it doesn't really matter that you're not fluent in their language. A lot of them are actually already trying to learn English. So if you speak slowly and clearly, mind you, not louder, but speaking slowly and clearly, you'd be surprised just how much they'd understand. If not, there's always hand gestures. I mean, even if you're in a restaurant, let's say you wanted to order some fish, or you're asking like, do they have fish? If you were to say fish, or I want to eat chicken. I mean, they're going to understand, what you're trying to get at. And I know it sounds silly, but your goal here is to communicate. The odds are they might smile, but they're probably gonna bring you some fish or some chicken. So, I mean, when the mission is accomplished, what else really matters? Another key tip is to write down everything that you can. And if it's in a language that has a different alphabet from you, get your hotels to write down the languages. If you're walking down the street and you don't know where to go, look for somewhere like a hotel or a major restaurant chain for directions, because they'll most likely have someone there that speaks English. The receptionist at almost every desk in the world speaks some English. So if you really are lost, walk into a front desk, and usually they're very helpful in the hospitality industry, and they will be happy to write down the name of where you want to go. If you get into a taxi that doesn't speak English, the really cool thing is that, if you have it written down in their language and you just hand it to them, they're gonna be like, okay, I know exactly where that is, and take you there. Which, by the way, the internet has been wonderful for that. Also, Uber. Uber is amazing now, and they have Uber in Brazil. Uber saves so much trouble, because I always say the first person that's gonna try and rip you off in every country is probably gonna be a taxi driver. So if you have the Uber app, download that and use it in other countries. The price is already there, the directions are already there. You don't have to haggle about the price. You don't have to worry about them driving you around town to raise the meter. So using the internet is profound. And also, if you just pull up the exact name of the place, show it to the taxi driver, show it to someone who's asking for directions, and you'd be amazed what you can accomplish. I use the internet nonstop. I have T-Mobile, so it works in like 120 different countries. And I know it's kind of crazy, but I've actually been in relationships with people that don't speak a word of English. I remember I met a girl, and I was in Vietnam, and I met a girl from China. And it was kind of funny because she didn't speak a word of English, but we were staying in the same hostel. So we kept looking at each other for a couple days before she walks up to me and boldly says in broken English, "I like brown skin." And I was like, say no more. Now, I had never even met anyone from Upper Mongolia before, but being able to actually hang out with her was an amazing experience. Me and a few of her friends, I've actually talked about this on Facebook quite a bit, because we rode mopeds from Chiang Mai to Pai. It was me and 5 college-aged Chinese kids who did not speak a word of English. We use WeChat, we use Google Translate, we copy and pasted everything, hand gestures, and so for about 5 days, that was how we communicated. So, I mean, trying to get out there and bridge that gap is an amazing way for personal growth. Also, while you're out there, try and collect business cards. Hotels have business cards, restaurants have business cards, because those business cards will have the address. Now, let's say you eat at an amazing restaurant and then you leave, you might not be able to find that restaurant again. But by having that business card in the local language, it's really easy to get someone to give you directions back to that restaurant. Another thing you can do, since we all have a smartphone in our pocket, is take pictures. Take a lot of pictures. Take a picture of the front of your hotel. Take a picture of anywhere that your taxi driver drops you off. Take pictures of restaurants that you visit. And you can use those pictures as a reference to go back and ask people for directions. Because even if they don't understand what you're asking for, do you know this restaurant? They're gonna be able to help you out if they know where that restaurant is. But my biggest tip is try to learn the other language. When you're first starting off, you pretty much stick to tourist areas and you are always around people that speak English. But as you get more advanced in traveling and start going off the beaten path, you're going to encounter a lot of people that don't speak a word of English. I spent months in the Himalayas. I did volunteer construction work after the earthquake in Nepal. And I went to a village where I was the first American in history to ever visit there. But even more profound for me, I was the first Black person they have ever seen. And I'll probably do a whole video on that at a later day. But it was really funny because I learned a Pali from the local children. They were happy to spend their time after school teaching me English. Now, I remember working with one girl who was about 10 years old, and it was kind of funny because she would sit me down and give me these lessons about common household things. You know, she'd point to water and say pani. She'd point to sugar and say chini. But I'll never forget, she holds up a spoon and she goes, chamcha, chamcha. And I said, chamcha. And she takes the spoon and she goes, yum, 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 yum. And I thought, wait a minute. You think I don't know how to use a spoon? Like, do you think I'm stupid? But it's all right. I was learning the language, and sometimes you just have to humble yourself and be a student, even if the master is only 10 years old. So hopefully some of those tips have been something that you will find useful in your travels. The biggest thing is don't be afraid. Just get out there and go. Dive right in and realize that there's a whole network of people around this world that are willing to catch you and help you along the way. Humble yourself and realize that a lot of people out there want to learn English better than they already do, as well as they're happy to teach you some phrases from their language. So if you found this video useful, do me a favor, cast your vote and hit the like button. And I would like to do a lot more frequently asked question videos. So drop a comment, let me know what question you would like to know about travel, and I will see you in the world.